So good morning. Now I want you to start with a particular image in your mind, and I'm sure you already know what it is. Sheep. Just close your eyes, and I want you to just picture two sheep. All right. Open your eyes. Now, I really didn't want to have you close your eyes. I really wanted to have sheep here in worship with us this Sunday. And granted, I realize we don't have a lot of sheep grazing around the Stop and Shop here, you know. So I decided I would reach out and I would ask a couple of people if I could say, hey, can I borrow a couple sheep for worship on a Sunday? And unfortunately, I didn't get the kind of response I wanted because the cost of bringing them here and the tariff of 2 cows just seemed a bit extreme. So I decided to buy roses instead. But the reality is here on Long Island and in many places I've served along the East Coast, I have to say that my pastoral experience never really had me encountering sheep in person. My experiences as a pastor had more to deal with, yappy dogs than a shepherd and a staff, right? But what we hear in today's readings in Psalm 23 and in John chapter 10 is we are smack dab in the middle of this metaphor that is focusing on sheep. And like I said, if you heard my message last week, you might recall me having spoken about Jesus' charge to Peter and about tending the sheep and feeding the sheep. And granted, we understand that naturally that we aren't talking about ancient agriculture here, but rather Jesus is talking about us when he refers to his sheep. And he, being the ultimate shepherd, reminds us that it's about faith towards Jesus. And you know what? Today, faith in Jesus comes at a time where there's a lot of noise in our world. And so it's about trusting a shepherd when everything else around us feels chaotic. That's our theme for today. Now I know, like we said, when Maureen read Psalm 23 for us, they're familiar words, and it's real easy for us to go on autopilot. The Lord is my shepherd. Yeah, we know it, right? It's beautiful, it's familiar, it's like that lullaby that we just can't forget, which is ironic because we're not in the lullaby kind of world right now, are we? We don't hear many lullabies right now. We are living in a time where our leaders seem to treat executive orders like, I don't know, napkin doodles at a bad dinner party. They just scratch something down. It's like, here's an executive order for you, and for you, and for you. I mean, just last week, one of these orders landed somewhere between the ban on diversity training and restrictions on reproductive rights, left many of us wondering, wait, is this real? Did they just say this out loud? I think I turned to my wife and I said to her, you got to be bleeping kidding me. But yet, in this climate, we have Jesus saying in John chapter 10, my sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. No one will snatch them out of my hand. And it's really a lovely sentiment. It really sits very nicely with us, doesn't it? But what does it actually mean for my sheep to hear Jesus' voice when the world feels like it's being run by wolves in golf shirts? But let's focus on the sheep. People love to call sheep dumb, but I don't think that's quite that fair. I would argue that they're cautious. They actually build themselves in community. They don't wander off on their own. And they remember faces and voices. Sheep are vulnerable. Sheep are not aggressive. They don't growl or puff themselves up trying to make themselves look more powerful or intimidating or more intelligent than what they really are. Their superpower is sticking together. It's sticking together and listening for the shepherd's voice. That's their superpower. That's what sheep do. That's who sheep are. And that's who Jesus says that we are. That we are sheep. That the church is sheep. And let me be clear, Jesus isn't calling us passive. He's not telling us to roll over and let injustice have the last word. He's reminding us that when the world gets loud and chaotic, our first task is not to match the chaos. With our kiddos, things can get chaotic in the house. And I have to admit that I lose my patience much more quickly than my lovely wife does. So she frequently needs to remind me to meet their chaos with calm. And so Jesus chimes in, saying, "My shepherd, hear my voice. I know them." So Jesus' first instruction to us is, to his sheep, is to listen. And when we do that, we realize there's something incredibly intimate and personal about that. It's not my sheep memorize my rules or my sheep win arguments on social media. Rather, it's my sheep hear me. They know me, and I know them. And that's where Psalm 23 sort of walks right into our lives then. It's where we hear, "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." Now let me ask you, when was the last time that you had your soul restored? I hope you say Easter Sunday. That would be a good time. But between court cases and climate disasters and political statements that read like hate-filled satire, the general exhaustion of adulting in the 2020s, a restored soul feels like a luxury, doesn't it? Something you see in a Goop catalog between jade rollers and herbal eye patches. And yet God says to us, lie down, drink, breathe. Now I need to tell you that the chaotic voice, if we hear the chaotic voice saying this, the chaotic voice will tell you this: lie down, you got to be kidding me. I have no time to lie down. I have 12 things on my schedule to do before 3 p.m. And even if I don't get those things, even if I do get those things done, my brain won't shut down long enough for me to lie down. No way, no lying down for me. And drink. Well, you know I need a drink. How about 2 glasses of wine, a Long Island iced tea with a chaser of a scotch? Single malt would be really nice. And then, just maybe then I might be able to lie down, right? And breathe. You gotta be kidding me. You bet your backside I'm gonna breathe. Breathe. Okay. But that's not how we're really supposed to hear Psalm 23 now, are we? I mean, did you listen to the calm in Maureen's voice as she read it? That's just like hearing God speak. God says, lie down, drink, breathe. I've got you. And then the passage turns a little bit more radical. It says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Not far away, not off in a distance, not in a galaxy far, far away. Before me in the presence of my enemies. Not once we've beaten them. It's right here where God says, sit, eat, be nourished, even in the midst of this chaos. And Jesus doubles down on this in John chapter 10, in case you missed it. He says, no one will snatch them out of my hand. Not corrupt politician, not ICE agents, not the next news cycle, not that sinking feeling you get when you said, did you hear about Alcatraz? I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is not escapism. This is not Jesus, take the wheel, I'm going to go sit in the back seat somewhere. No, this is Jesus saying, you are not alone. You are not powerless. You are mine. And even when the wolves howl and the world trembles, I will not let you go. That's what our shepherd says to us. And when we receive that, we can see that there is hope and promise embedded in this comforting disposition. It invites us to listen to Christ's voice, not just in prayer, but in action. In the act of listening to our neighbors, in the movements we take in the hope of justice for others, and in the voices that say, this isn't right. We can do better. And speaking of sheep and shepherds, have you ever watched the TV show The Mandalorian? I love that show. And if you haven't seen it, it's a sci-fi Western hybrid that comes out of the Star Wars universe about a bounty hunter and a baby that looks remarkably like an infant Yoda. Everybody knows who Yoda is, right? And somehow it ends up being one of the most clear metaphors, a modern metaphor for shepherding, shepherds, and sheep. Because here we have Pedro Pascal, which is one of Maureen's favorites, I understand. Pedro Pascal is this gruff loner who ends up protecting this tiny, vulnerable creature he calls the child. And by the end, you realize that the bounty hunter has become the shepherd. He's not in it for glory, he's in it for love. That's the shepherd that Jesus gives us. Not detached, but connected and involved. Not domineering and demanding, but devoted and committed. So let's put this in practical terms. As a community of faith in this time and place here on Long Island, we have our local debates, we have our national fears, but we also have a calling. The calling is to be people of stillness in a storm. That calling to be people of stillness in a storm is to offer compassion when fear is loud. And to show up, not just on Sundays, but in town halls, at school board meetings, in food pantries, in letters to our local politicians, displaying the kind of love that doesn't run dry when things get tense. And it may seem like small stuff, but friends, feeding sheep isn't glamorous. It's daily, it's dirty, it's slow. But it's also sacred. Feeding sheep is sacred. So when you email your representative about a policy that harms the vulnerable, you're listening to the shepherd. When you speak up against hateful theology, you're following the shepherd. When you make a casserole for a neighbor who's grieving, even if it's a frozen one, you're being the church. And when you just can't anymore, when you just can't, when the noise is too loud, the wolves are too close, and the headlines are too absurd, know this, the shepherd still has you. Because goodness and mercy are still chasing you down. Not because you've got it all together, not because you can fix the system overnight, but because you belong to the one who laid down his life, not just for individuals, but for the whole flock. So you know what, friends? Let's be sheep. Say it with me. Let's be sheep. Not in the sense of conformity, but in the sense of courage. Let's be sheep who listen carefully, who resist cruelty, and who refuse to be herded by fear. Let's be those who follow the voice of peace, justice, grace, and love, even if it's just a whisper. Because, friends, there are still green pastures ahead. There are still waters that need restored, and a shepherd who says, no one will snatch you out of my hand. For that is the shepherd who has us all. Amen.